Assalamu alaikum everyone. This video tutorial is related to chapter number 3, that is of basically research methodology. So let's start with the basic first definition of this chapter, that is related to the introduction of this chapter. So the definition is related to the introduction. So you have to just basically explain that what this chapter is about. So if you can see that the research was conducted to identify the determinants of attitude towards food delivery application and continuous intention to use food delivery applications in Karachi, Pakistan. So the methodology chosen for this research was explanatory and correlation. You have to just provide us a complete summary of this chapter, that what you have done and what methodological technique you used, what was your research purpose, what was your research design, how you gathered the data, which statistical technique you used, how much data you gathered. You have to just provide a basic introduction over here in few lines. After this, you have to briefly explain each and every aspect of the methodology. So the heading 3.2 is research approach. So if you can see that there are it is mentioned that there are two types of the research approaches, that is quantitative and the qualitative approach. What you have to do is you first have to explain both type of the research approaches, that what quantitative approach is and then what qualitative approach is, and then you have to explain why you used quantitative approach. So just to give you a basic idea, qualitative approach is those approaches in which you gather the data with the help of the interviews. And now in your research you conduct the data with the help of the Likert scale questionnaire, and that is quantifiable. So your research approach is quantitative approach. So whatever you write over here, you have to provide with recent citations. That if you are explaining the definition of quantitative research approach, you have to identify a basic definition from any published paper or from the book as well of any research methodology, and then write the definition from those books and then provide citations and then defend why you use quantitative approach. After this, there is a heading of research purpose. So there are two types of the research purpose, exploratory and explanatory. Basically there are three types of the research purpose. The one is descriptive, then exploratory, then explanatory. Descriptive researches are those researches in which you just explain the data, that how much female audiences and how much male audiences. So this type of the research in which you are going to only describe your data is known as descriptive study. An exploratory study is those study in which you are going to explore something new, that is based on the grounded theories, such as if you are doing something that was not done before, or the less discovered area or the untapped area that you are going to explore. So in majority of the time, if you conduct exploratory study, you have to gather the data with the help of the interviews, because you cannot get any secondary data available for that type of the research. And the explanatory researches are those researches in which you have already established theory. On that theory you are going to further explain those relationships. So in majority of the cases, you all have the explanatory research purpose. So what you have to do is you have to first describe all of these three first, and then explain that why your research is explanatory. After this, and make sure that you have to use citations in writing this, so you can use any research methodology book from where you can get these type of the definitions, and then you can cite that particular book. Then research design. So basically research designs are of four types. One is descriptive, experimental, causal, and correlation. Descriptive, as I earlier told you, that what kind of the research are called descriptive. Experimental studies are those studies in which you are going to perform some experiments, such as like you are going to gather the data from the 50 respondents by showing some kind of the advertisement, or let's suppose if you're going to give some burger, and then you are going to identify that what is the impact of this burger on their health. So these kind of the researches in which you are going to basically experiment something, that kind of the researches are called experimental researches. And the correlation researches are those researches in which you are going to identify the relationship between the two variables, such as if you are going to identify the relationship between satisfaction and loyalty. So these kind of the researches are called correlational research. And causal researches are those researches such as if you are going to identify the impact of satisfaction on loyalty. So if your hypothesis is like this, satisfaction has a positive relation with loyalty, then your research design should be correlation. But if you made the hypothesis like this, such as satisfaction has a positive and significant impact on loyalty, then it must be correlation and causal both, because you're going to check the relationship as well as the impact. So what you have to do is, again, you have to first describe all the four research designs and then explain that why your research design is correlational or causal or whatsoever. Then target population. In this target population, you have to clearly explain that why is this your target population. So let's suppose I gave you example. Let's say if you are working in related to the internet banking adoption, so who will be the target audience? The consumers who have bank accounts. So let's suppose if you're working on the topic or related to food delivery application, so who will be the respondent? Those who have who have an experience of food delivery applications, usage experience of food delivery applications. So what you have to do is you have to think that what is your target population of this study, and then you have to clearly explain that who is your target population. Then there is a heading of sample size. So you have to explain that why you considered the data of 300. Let's suppose if you are going to get the data of 300, so there are so many criteria by which you can calculate your sample size. So you can I'll share the other documents with you guys, so you can easily calculate the sample size required for your study, and then you have to provide with citation that it was recommended by blah 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 to gather the data of, let's suppose, 300 respondents. After this, there is the heading of data collection technique. So what is the data collection technique? How you gather the data, you have to explain in this heading. If you are going to gather the data with the help of the questionnaire, so what kind of the questionnaire is? So you can see that this study used 5-point Likert scale questionnaire. Obviously it was extracted from the past study. You have to clearly explain explain that how will you going to collect the data, or what was your research instrument basically. After this, there is a heading of sampling technique. In this sampling technique, you have to clarify that what is your sampling technique. So there are basically two types of sampling techniques. The one is probability, the other is non-probability sampling technique. So probability sampling technique is applicable if you have a complete information of your target audience. So basically, in majority of the cases, we do not have a complete information of the total number of the target sample. So the other approach is non-probability sampling, and there are different types of non-probability sampling, such as convenience and, let's suppose, purposive, and there are so many other types. So convenience sampling is a type of non-probability sampling, and it is used if you are going to gather data from each and every individual. Let's suppose if you're going to gather the data from the mobile phone user, so you can say that everyone owns mobile phones. So your target, your sampling technique is non-probability convenience sampling, because you can get the response from everyone. But if you are going to gather the data from those respondents who own smartphone, but specifically iPhone, so what now you have to do is you have to identify that respondent who own iPhone. So this is purposive. There is a purpose behind it. You are going to identify only that respondent, only that respondent who own iPhone. So this kind of the technique is called non-probability purposive sampling. So you have to think what is your target audience. According to that, you have to write this heading. And obviously, before writing your technique, you have to first explain that there are two types of the research purpose. There are two types of the sampling techniques: probability and non-probability, and these are the types of non-probability sampling, and then so on. After this, there is a heading of a statistical technique. In this heading, you have to identify, you have to clearly tell that what technique you are going to use. So in your case, your technique should be PLS-SEM, So you have to explain that why are you using PLSM. You have to defend it. What is the benefit of using PLSM? So in this heading you have to write it with citation. After this you have to place your research model, and then in the last heading you have to provide the operational definitions of each and every variable. Let's suppose if this is the model, you have to provide the definition of convenience under this section, operational definitions, then design, then trustworthiness, then price, then various food choices, and so on. So what you have to do is in 3.11 you have to provide the operational definitions of each variable, whether it is independent, whether it is mediator, whether it's independent, with citations. Alright, so that's about the literate chapter number 3. One thing is missing in this section. You have to write a heading of related to research instrument. Alright, you can let me check it and then let me explain it. Let's suppose if this is the heading of the target population, is it design? Let me check. So statistical technique before the sampling technique. And okay, in the heading of data collection technique, you should explain your questionnaire in depth, such as your questionnaire comprised of 2 parts. The one is related to the demographic profile, in which questions related to age, gender, education, and whatever you ask in your questionnaire, you have to provide the information of that particularly, and then you have to provide the information related to the items of the constructs, that is variable. So you can write like this. In the second part of the questionnaire, the items related to the constructs were mentioned that were extracted from the past studies, and then you have to provide the citations that from where you extract that particular items. Let's suppose customer satisfaction items were extracted from the study of blah and blah, and then customer loyalty items were extracted from the study of this and this. So you have to provide each and every detail of your research instrument under the heading of data collection technique. So that's it about chapter number 3. I hope this video will help you in writing your chapter number 3. Thank you so much.